Karen's first scream didn't come from the HOA office. It came from her bathroom at 6 a.m., loud enough to wake the street. By the time neighbors peeked out, she was standing in her driveway with clumps of blonde hair in her fists, accusing me of sabotaging her beauty. Me? The guy who told her 100 times to stay the hell out of my lake. Welcome to Prodigy Tales. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch HOA drama. Now, before you call me dramatic, let me paint the picture. My lake isn't some Instagrammable paradise. It's a leftover pit of chemical soup from an old factory site, fenced off with giant yellow signs screaming, "Hazardous water, no swimming." Even ducks don't land there. But did that stop Karen? Absolutely not. In her world, rules are optional, and her HOA badge is the golden key to everything. She started calling it the Community Wellness Lagoon. She'd waddle over in a giant straw hat, cheap sunglasses, and a pink flamingo floaty, sometimes with boxed wine, sometimes with her loud Bluetooth speaker blasting relaxation music. She'd wave at me from the water like she was in a commercial for Delusion, shouting, "You don't own nature, Bob." Karen insists on calling me Bob, though that's not my name. The first time I confronted her, she told me the HOA bylaws gave her unrestricted access to community resources. I told her the only thing unrestricted was her ignorance. She clutched her floaty like a life raft and said, "You'll thank me when this lake raises property value." Right, because nothing screams luxury like radioactive algae and toxic fumes. I filed complaints, called City Hall, even handed her the inspection reports proving the lake was dangerous. She laughed and said, "That's just government fear tactics." Meanwhile, she kept treating my hazardous lake like her personal day spa, bringing other HOA board members along for wellness dips. And so while I shook my head from the shore, I knew it was only a matter of time before nature, well, toxic sludge, did its job. And oh boy, when it did, Karen wasn't ready. Before we dive in, please comment what country or city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. Karen didn't just keep sneaking into my hazardous lake, she practically scheduled it into her calendar. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays became lake therapy days. She'd stomp down the street in her ridiculous spa robe, dragging that flamingo float like a celebrity entering rehab, and announce to anyone listening, self-care is community care. The HOA sheep followed. By week 2, I had a parade of nosy neighbors waddling into my yard, carrying beach towels and coolers like my toxic pit was some kind of resort. They set up chairs, slathered themselves in sunscreen, and acted like I was their unpaid lifeguard. Karen even brought out a whistle. Yes, a whistle. And started calling herself Lake Director. I stood there, arms crossed, asking if they'd lost their collective minds. "You're going to regret this," I warned. Karen smirked, dipped her toes in the greenish muck, and said, "The only regret here is your lack of community spirit, Bob." Again with the Bob. At first, they all pretended it was magical. Karen claimed the tingling on her skin was proof of deep cleansing. When another neighbor started coughing uncontrollably, Karen called it detox. One guy's arm broke out in blotchy rashes, and she suggested he drink more lake water to balance it out. I nearly choked when she said it. I filed even more complaints, but the city moved slower than molasses. And every day, my yard looked like a deranged beach party from hell. I caught Karen once floating with a bottle of boxed Chardonnay, shouting, "This is natural medicine," as the flamingo slowly deflated beneath her. Then the little warning signs started adding up. Karen's wiggy blonde curls looked thinner each week. She tried to cover it up with bigger hats, but every time she climbed out of the lake, her hair seemed to cling to the water more than her head. Of course, she brushed it off, literally, laughing that seasonal shedding was normal. But the neighbors started whispering. They noticed the coughs, the rashes, the weird chemical stink sticking to their skin, and they definitely noticed Karen's hair swirling down storm drains. The toxic lake was winning, and Karen, she was about to lose. Badly. By the third week, Karen's hairline looked like it was plotting an escape. At first, it was just thinning. Then it turned into bald patches the size of quarters. She tried to fix it with a home perm kit, but the result was less glam and more fried haystack. Every time she brushed, more clumps came out. By then, my morning entertainment was watching her scream at her bathroom mirror loud enough to wake the neighborhood. But did Karen own up to her lake addiction? Nope. She marched straight to my porch one Saturday, clutching a fistful of hair like evidence in a crime scene, and accused me of poisoning the water. According to her, I had dumped hair removal chemicals into the lake to sabotage her. Meanwhile, she looked like a molting parrot mid-divorce. "Bob!" she shrieked. Again, not my name. "You've destroyed my hair, my reputation, my image." She gestured wildly, her cheap wig sliding halfway off her head. I couldn't help it. I laughed. That was the moment her HOA army arrived, some of them scratching their own rashes and coughing like old smokers. Karen pointed at me with shaky authority, declaring, "This man has waged chemical warfare against the HOA." The crowd gasped like we were at a bad soap opera. I held up the stack of state-issued hazard reports I'd been waving at them for weeks. "The lake was already toxic," I reminded them. "You were trespassing. I warned you." Of course, reason never worked with Karen. She doubled down, calling me a domestic eco-terrorist. She even staged a mock trial in the HOA clubhouse, where she paraded around in a crooked wig and tried to convince everyone that my backyard was basically Chernobyl because of me. But the whispers spread. Neighbors noticed Karen's bald spots peeking out from under her sun hats. Kids nicknamed her Patchy the Lake Witch. Every meeting ended with snickers when her wig slipped. And as her humiliation grew, so did her desperation to pin the disaster on me. The funny part? I didn't have to lift a finger. Karen was sinking, hair first. The HOA trial was the dumbest circus I'd ever seen. Karen strutted into the clubhouse in her crooked dollar store wig, acting like Judge Judy in flip-flops. She'd printed flyers calling me the lake villain and passed them out like campaign posters. Half the board sat scratching their arms raw, while the other half just tried not to laugh at the fact her wig was on backwards. That's when my ace card walked in, the state environmental inspector. Clipboard, lab coat, and a stack of reports thick enough to shut down a nuclear plant. He looked around the room, took one whiff of Karen's detoxed lake stench still clinging to her, and sighed like he'd seen this too many times. He laid it out clear. The lake had been labeled hazardous decades ago after industrial dumping. I hadn't poisoned anything. Karen had been marinating herself in government-documented sludge the whole time, and every single one of them ignored multiple legal warning signs to dive right in. Trespassing, endangerment, willful stupidity in triplicate. The room went dead silent until someone snorted at Karen's wig slipping sideways again. That broke the dam. Laughter erupted, people pulling out phones, snapping pictures of her half-bald head. The inspector even coughed to hide a chuckle. Karen's face turned redder than a stop sign, but the humiliation was already viral. Within hours, her meltdown was plastered across the neighborhood group chat. Memes were born. Lake Witch Karen with photoshopped seaweed hair. Her attempt to sue me backfired spectacularly. Instead, the city slapped her with fines for trespassing, ignoring safety postings, and leading others into hazardous conditions. The HOA board scrambled to distance themselves, blaming Karen for misrepresentation. Classic rats off a sinking ship. Now, every HOA meeting features Karen in a stiff, synthetic wig that shines like plastic under the fluorescent lights. She glares at me like I invented radiation itself, but no one takes her seriously anymore. In fact, whenever she tries to bring up community health, someone coughs dramatically or whispers, "Careful, don't lose another patch," and the room bursts into laughter. The lake is still off limits, but the legend of Karen's toxic spa days will live forever. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Comment below.